Hello. In today's session we are going to be looking at using the dry brush technique and also wax resist technique, and we're going to use those techniques to create some little seascapes. This one here is done by dragging a white oil pastel across. This one here is done by stippling. This one here, these two are examples of dry brushing, and obviously I'm going to do a demonstration of these techniques, and we're going to do a little test sheet before we create a painting. So these are dry brush, and that one has actually got some wax resist on, and this one here has also got some wax resist. I'm also just going to show you a couple of other examples of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be creating some very cold seascapes using variety of colours, and then we're going to do slightly more bright summery looking ones, but still using the similar technique. So again, these are wax resist techniques. These ones obviously are doing the sort of stipply technique, and this one here is actually used by doing some more sort of wiggly lines. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to show you those techniques, and then we're going to have a go at doing a painting. Okay, so we're going to start off by doing a little test sheet using the different techniques. You will need an oil pastel or a piece of household candle. So either a white oil pastel, or what you can do is you can chop up a piece of household white candle. This is a piece of those little tea lights that you get. If you chop them into quarters, that works perfectly, and you can just use that to do the wax resist technique if you haven't got an oil pastel. The colours we're going to be using for the test sheet are cobalt blue and Payne's grey. Okay, just these two colours. Okay, so you get your paints mixed up, get yourself a piece of paper and either an oil pastel or a piece of cut up candle, and we're going to do a demonstration and have a little go. Okay, so we're going to start off by trying the dry brush technique, and it's a good idea to try it with two different brushes and see which one you prefer. A flat brush and a medium sort of pointy brush if you've got them. And I'm going to be using obviously the cobalt blue and the Payne's grey, but I'm going to add a tiny touch of the mix it in the centre here to the blue. I'm going to add a tiny touch of the Payne's grey to make it a little bit darker, just so that it shows up nicely on your page. All right, so you make it slightly darker blue. Now, dry brush technique, as it suggests, means you have a dry brush. So make sure your brushes are dry. And start off with this one. And dry brushing is just having a small amount of paint on your brush. So I've put a little bit of paint on here. You can dab off the excess on your tissue, and we're just going to drag it along. Well, I've not got much paint, it doesn't. Got too little paint on there. Just going to drag it along very lightly, and you'll get little sort of streaky marks. See, I'm doing it as lightly as possible, because what you can do, you can obviously build up more. Just do it lightly, and you can always build more marks up afterwards. So you can sort of see you get an effect where you get little white areas showing through. That's the plan. So that's doing it with a flat brush, or you can try it also using a pointy brush, and this time we're going to use the side of the brush. Okay, so I'm going to roll. I'll show you. Roll my brush in the paint, so you've got it on the side of the brush. And again, take off the excess because you don't want too much on there. And this time we're going to drag the brush and sort of use the side area. So, oops, that's too wet. I'm dabbing it on my tissue there. And you should hear a sort of scratchy sound. Now this is what I prefer, using a round brush, because I feel I've got more control over it. So you can put it on like that, and you can then build up a little bit more on the top if you want to. Can you see? You get that nice broken. I'm going to get a little bit more paint take off the excess again on my tissue so it's not too much, and you can just go over areas so you've got some areas that are a bit darker. So I'm just going to show you that effect there. All right, so those are the dry brush techniques. Okay, so we're now going to try wax resist. So several ways of doing this. Either by, you can drag it along so you get something similar to the dry brush effect. We can do like little stipples so you get sparkles, or you can do little wiggly lines so you get more of a choppy sea effect. All right, so I'm going to try those different things and then apply paint. So first of all, I'm going to use a little side bit of the oil pastel, and I'm very lightly going to drag this across the page. You can't obviously see it at the moment, but if you sort of hold it up to the light, you can just about see where you've been. On here, I'm going to do some sort of stipply marks. Little dots. And then I'm also going to do some little wiggly marks. I've actually sharpened the end of this so that I can get a sort of finer point. But if you're using a bit of this, you should have quite easily get a sort of pointy edge. So I'm just going to do a few wiggly lines. Try to make it a bit random. There we are. Okay, so what we're now going to do, we're going to put washes of colour over the top, and your oil pastel mark should be revealed. So we're just putting that across, and you should see that where the oil pastel is, the paint won't go over. It sort of runs off. So your marks should show up and be revealed, the marks that you created using your oil pastel. There we go. Okay, so I've just tried this off, and you can now hopefully see the sort of marks you can create by using the different oil pastel wax resist techniques. So you can get sort of little dots and sort of sparkly effects. You can get something here a little bit similar to dry brushing by just dragging the oil pastel across. So you get little broken marks, and you can get some little wiggly lines. I'm just going to now show you some other couple of pictures where I've used these techniques in a more completed form. I'm just going to show you those. Right, I'm just going to show you some completed pictures that they're only in frame, so you get a little bit of reflection off the glass. But this is using the wax resist technique and by dragging the oil pastel across. And hopefully you can see that's quite effective to give you that sort of broken area of sort of sparkle on the sea. These pictures I'm going to show you were both done sort of outside, painting outside. So you've got the idea. It's actually quite a nice technique to do if you're sort of sketching outside, because you don't have to take lots of materials with you. So hopefully you can sort of see the wiggly lines there as well on this one. If you can see that little wiggly lines. So it's a very effective technique. Okay, so, and I use it quite a lot. Okay, so I've got my paper tape down, ready to do a painting now. The first thing you need to think about when you're doing this is obviously where you're going to put your horizon, your sea line. I tend to put it about a third up or down, so that but for this reason we're not painting lots of sky today, so I would do it so leave about a third sky and 2/3 for your sea. So you need to draw your horizon line straight when you're doing a seascape. That's the only thing you need to remember. It looks a bit strange if it's not. There we go. So I'm just doing a straight pencil line where I'm going to have my horizon. And you need to also decide if you're going to have a little bit of land or something on there. You can put this on afterwards, so we can paint the sky, we can do the sea, and then if you want to put some little land on the horizon, you can add those in. All right, so we're going to start off using the dry brush technique for the first painting, because I think that's sort of one of the easiest ones to sort of master, and then you can go on and practice doing the wax resist. So cobalt blue and Payne's grey. So I'm going to be using just the cobalt blue for the sky, and I'm going to do quite a watery wash, and I'm going to wet the sky area thoroughly, and then I'm going to do a wash and also get a tissue ready, because I'm going to lift out some clouds with my tissue. So I can now come in and lift out some clouds. So we've got some clouds on the horizon line there. Just make sure, make that a bit better of a shape. It's better. There we are. Okay, so we now need to think about doing the dry brush for your sea. So I'm going to be using my round brush, my pointy brush, and I'm going to come in with just some cobalt blue, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the Payne's grey to it to make some darker marks over the top. So get my tissue, just take off the excess paint, remember, and I'm just going to lightly drag this along. I'm just going to paint the horizon line in carefully first. That's it, so it's straight. There we go. So I'll make sure I've got a horizon line. Then I can come in and I'm going to start putting in some more broken marks. And you want that nice scratchy noise. Which means your brush is nice and dry. Okay, so you can see I've got some nice broken marks there, and then I can come in and what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little bit of the cobalt blue, add some Payne's grey to it to make it darker. So it's a lovely, more of an inky dark blue. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the excess off again. And I'm going to come in and add some darker marks over the top of this to give it a bit more interest. A bit more paint on there. Take the excess off again. Really remember to make sure you don't have much paint on, otherwise you'll end up with a big blob. Take it off all the time. pressing. That's it. That's enough. I might actually just add a bit more in the sides. Actually, I've got to realise I've got quite a lot of light here in the side areas. I'm just going to come in from that way and add a bit more colour. That's better. I think I might just do it so I've got a little bit more just showing in the centre. That's it, it's broken it up a little bit. And here as well, this edge as well. Done the same thing. I've come in and left those edges a little bit white. So you see you've got a nice sort of broken marks there. Okay, let's put a little bit more here. That's better. I broke it up a bit. It was looking a bit fun. Right, so that's that. So I can dry this off, and then it's just thinking about putting something on the horizon line and a little something in the foreground. So I'm just going to do a couple of little bits of land on the horizon line. I've done a very, very watery mix of the Payne's grey, so it's really, really pale. And I'm going to just do a little bit of very pale grey. Patch of land on the horizon. And you can just see something there. And what I'm going to do a darker mix now and have another bit of land here. But this time it's going to be darker. So it's going to look as if it's a little bit closer. That's a bit of a runny mix. I'm just going to make my my mix a little bit thicker because that's a bit watery. Hang on. Okay, so I'm just touching this up with a slightly darker wash. And what I've done this one, I've come down very, very slightly below the horizon line. So it looks as if this one's a little bit closer to the one behind, as you can see. And now you can think about what you would like to do in your foreground. Now I'm just going to show you some examples of ones I've done earlier, so leave that to one side. So there's this one where you can have like a little bit of a rock and some grassy stems. Again, some sort of grassy stems in the foreground, and this one's got a bit more of a large rock here. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of both. So I'm going to do a bit of rock and a little bit of some grassy bits, I think. So you want this to be nice dark because obviously this is right in the foreground, so it wants to be as dark as possible. You might want to add a little bit more paint to make it slightly thicker for this bit. Come in and add a little bit of rock here. I'll try and make it a little bit more rugged. There we are. And I'm going to have a little bit here with some grassy sort of stems coming up. Just do a little splodge there. And I'm going to have some grassy little bits coming up here. So let's get my fine brush again. Grab my fine brush. There it is. And you can just come up like we did on one of the other paintings, just come up from below the masking tape and flick upwards. And that just sort of finishes it off. There, and I'm just going to scratch through that a little bit with my palette knife. I'll just try and take off the masking tape and we can see what it looks like. Okay, so I've dried it off, taken off the masking tape, and as you can see, that's quite an effective technique. It sort of gives you the idea of the sort of ripples and white foam on the sea. And I said that's a very useful technique doing if you're out sketching outside. So you haven't got to take lots of things with you. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to now practice one of the wax resist techniques. And I think we'll carry on using these colours, the sort of cool colours, and we'll do something a bit more of a choppy sea. So I think if we practice this sort of technique where we're doing the wiggly lines with the oil pastel with a bit of wax crayon, and I'm going to put, it's nice to have maybe a little bit of a rock in the sea so that you've got some sort of waves crashing up the rock. So I'm going to get another piece of paper ready and we're going to have a little go at that one. Okay, so I've drawn a horizon line on and I've drawn a little suggestion of a rock here and another little rock here in the sea. So what I'm going to do, I've got my oil pastel and I'm going to try and do a few little sort of wiggly marks in the sea to sort of just suggest the choppiness of the water. You want to make these quite random, and I'm going to do some around the rock, coming up the edge of the rock here, trying to give a suggestion of a few. I'm going to do a few little splattery bits like sea spray coming up and around. And then do a little bit of that here in the foreground as well. Just a little bit of suggestions, marks. Hopefully that's enough. There. Job to see what you're doing when you're doing this, but hopefully that's okay. So what we're going to do first of all, we're going to paint the sky. So wet the sky area thoroughly. And although I've got a rock there, I can go straight over the top because I'm going to paint the rock in afterwards on the horizon line. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about trying to paint around it for your sky. There we are. Just wet that. Bit of watery cobalt blue for the sky. Just that line. A little bit darker because it dries paler than. That's it. And then I can lift out some clouds. Tissue. I've left it like that because I'm actually going to put a rock there, so I haven't bothered painting that bit. That's coming in. There we are. I'm just going to lift out those clouds quite quickly, and I can come back in and just refine that edge very slightly. Nice big clouds. Let me just put another one up here. Just on the horizon. There we are. That'll do. Right, so better broken it up a bit. And that's fine for there. That what we're going to do is start painting in the sea. So I'm going to use a cobalt blue first of all, and then I'm going to come in and add some cobalt blue with the with some of the Payne's grey added in. So this time we're just doing a wash straight away across up to that line. So I've completed painting cobalt blue wash over here. I've left a little suggestion of where the rocks are going to be, but we're going to go over those in a minute anyway, so don't worry too much if you paint straight over them. I'm now going to mix some cobalt blue and Payne's grey together to make a darker wash, and I'm just going to come in and add some darks in here. So what I'm going to do in this painting that's slightly different to what we did before, I'm going to add some colour. What I'm going to now do, I'm going to tilt it like this. I'm going to get some paint on my brush, and we're going to allow it to run and trickle. Hopefully you can see that. So this is the darker wash that I'm just plonking on. And we're going to allow that to run and trickle. And you'll see you get some nice things happening quite naturally by just allowing it to do its own thing. You can always tweak it afterwards a little bit if you want to. Just let it run to the other side. And that will give you the idea of a bit more of a choppy sea as well. Just allowing that to run all the way to the other side. And then we can catch the drips on the other side. Just catch those drips there. So that's given us a bit more of a random look there. So I'm just going to do the same here on this side. Just let some of it run in this direction. Just a little bit. Get some water on it to make it run. There we go. And that just gives you a bit of variation in colour there. I'm just going to do that just so I've got some slightly darker bits. There we are. And let that run through so that it just breaks it up a little bit. And it's not all uniform colour, because you don't get that in the sea. You do get sort of patches of light and dark. So that's what I'm aiming for in here. So just allowing that to run a little bit. Can you see? I'm holding it and tilting it, just so you've got some different, say some slight different colour variations. Okay. Just touch those drips so they don't do too much damage. Okay, so to run a bit. So this is ever so wet now, so I need to just dry this off a little bit, and then we'll come back and look at doing the rocks. Okay, so I've dried this off now, and as you can see, hopefully it sort of starts to give you quite a nice choppy sea effect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of land on the horizon, and I'm just going to paint in a couple of rocks. So I'm going to do a slightly diluted wash of the Payne's Grey for my distant land on the horizon, and then I'm going to do these rocks that are close to the foreground a little bit darker. Obviously just taking care a little bit of that horizon line. There, something in the distance. There we are, that's fine. And then just, I say, a darker wash I need for where I've got these rocks. I've got a little bit of a rock here. The idea is that that's it. That looks as if, hopefully, you've got a little bit of splashy waves now on the rock. And just here, do another little rock in the foreground. To come out a little bit further, I think. And the idea was also that I had a suggestion of another little bit of crashy waves rather. I just need to make that a little bit darker. I think this in the foreground. I'm just going to slightly thicker paint mix, just for that, so it's very dark, nice and strong for this foreground rock. That's better. There So there we are. So we've got another little seascape there. I'm going to again dry it off and take off the masking tape so you can sort of see the finished result. And then we're going to move on to the third and final painting. Okay, so I've dried it, taken off the masking fluid, as you can see. It's quite an effective technique. You just need to be a bit careful when you're doing your sort of wiggly marks, trying to make them quite random, really. And it's nice, I say, to have a little bit of suggestion of sort of the waves crashing up on the rocks as well. So we're going to do one more painting using wax resist technique, and we're going to do the sort of stippling so it looks like sparkles on the sea. So I thought we'd use some more summery colours. So we're going to be using, I'll just show you an example of these ones. So we're going to be using some much brighter, some more summery looking colours on this one. So the colours we're using for this one is phthalo blue and lemon yellow. So these two colours. Okay, so if you want to get yourself some more paper and get your paints mixed up, and we'll come back and create the third painting. Okay, so I've got my paints mixed up. I've drawn my horizon line. I'm just going to do some lots of little stipply marks now to get some sparkles in the water. So it's up to you whether you want to have those evenly distributed or whether you would like just a little band of sparkly water in one area. It might help if you want to look at some photographs of sort of sparkles on the sea and the light on the water to give you some, help you and inspire you and give you some ideas. You can also, if you want to, incorporate a few little wiggly lines as well. It's entirely up to you what you'd rather do. Just put a few. There, that's lots of nice sparkles in the water there. So now I'm going to use the phthalo blue to paint the sky, but I'm going to dilute it quite a lot because it is an incredibly strong colour. So I'm diluting it. So it's really quite a weak wash. Okay. Right. This is actually, I'm just wetting the sky thoroughly, but I haven't cleaned my brush properly, so it's a bit blue. So thoroughly wet that area. Then I'm going to come in with my slightly stronger mix to put some colour in. It's a beautiful colour, phthalo blue. Lovely turquoisey blue. Beautiful. One of my favourite colours. And you can then, at this stage, start lifting out some clouds as well. So you come in with my tissue and we're going to lift out some clouds. Okay, so do a couple more up here. Just a little suggestion of something there as well. There we are. So we've got some clouds in the sky. Okay, so now we can get on and paint the sea. So I'm going to use phthalo blue, again a bit diluted mix to start with. Then we're going to add a little touch of lemon yellow to make it a bit more turquoisey in areas. So we're just going to go in, painting very carefully that horizon line again. Okay, so you can now see the sort of show see your sparkles where you put your oil pastel. So now I'm going to get a little tiny touch of lemon yellow, and I'm going to just add, that's a bit too green, a little tiny touch to the phthalo blue to make a beautiful sort of turquoisey colour. Okay, and what you can then do, dilute that a little bit, you can just add some little turquoise touches in here. Just some areas. And what I'm now going to do is get a slightly stronger mix of the phthalo, and like we did in the previous painting, I'm going to let it run. So I'm just going to do some on the horizon line, get that straight first, straightish. It's a little bit wiggly wobbly there. There, and then I'm going to come in, just add a little bit more and let it run down. That's the plan. So hold it like this, and you'll come in and see if I can add a few stronger little bits of colour and let them run through. There, so that's given you a slightly more interesting effect in the sea. And any little, that's really wet there, so I'll just rub that there so it doesn't. And I've got a bit of a light bit there, so I'm just going to just wet that slightly. That's fine. And at this stage you've got time to decide if you want to add any more colour. I'm just going to, it's dried off here, so I'm just going to wet that a little bit to let those, that's better, soften that in a little bit. Then I'm going to add, I'd quite like to add a tiny little bit more of the turquoisey colour in the centre there. So I'm just going to get a very diluted little bit of yellow. Tiny touch, don't want too much. Just add a couple of little areas of yellow and let those run through. I've added that in, a little bit of yellow, and I'm just going to let that just naturally run a little bit. So it's a bit more natural looking. That's better. Okay, so I'm going to get that dried off now. Okay, so I've dried this off. I'm not going to do huge amounts this one. I'm just going to do a little bit of land on the distance. Now, you've got an option to what colour to use now. I'm going to use a little bit of the Payne's grey I've got left in my palette from the previous painting. You could use a dark blue, a purple for the land and the ground. You can even use some brown if you want to. It's entirely up to you. You decide what you'd like to do, but I'm going to carry on and just use the Payne's grey that I've already got mixed up. Diluted wash there for a little bit of land on the horizon. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of suggestion of a foreground. So I'm going to do a slightly stronger mix of the Payne's grey this time. I'm not going to do anything too drastic here. I'm just going to have a little bit of suggestion of something going on. Just so it gives it a bit of a foreground and here as well. And then a few little grassy stems, or maybe might actually get my stick and just do a little sort of suggestion of a little twiggy shrub growing. Actually cover that up a bit more. It looks better if one side's slightly higher than the other. So there we are, it's better. Then I'm just going to do a stick and a little brush and just do a little suggestion of something. So get my stick and I'm just going to dip this in to the paint and just see if I can do maybe a little twiggy sort of stem here, shrubby. Might not work actually with this. I'll just see. Just do a suggestion of a little. I need more paint on my brush. It's not actually working. I'll use a little brush. Go back to my little brush. I thought that wasn't working very well. It's better. Actually don't like that. I'm going to take it away. You can at this stage tweak it. I'm just going to go with some grass. Keep it simple. Go with some grassy stems. And I'll just go in with a palette knife again. Might just do a little suggestion of a couple of sort of seed head type things. Coming up from the grass. Just to finish it off, maybe one more here. That's just giving it something a little bit extra. So I'll dry that off, take off the masking tape, and we'll have a little look at all the finished paintings. So here's all the completed paintings, and just a reminder of the techniques we've used in this session. We used dry brush technique, and we layered several colours to build up the texture on the water. We used wax resist technique in several different ways by using sort of squiggly lines and a few dotty bits to make sea spray and choppy sea, and also by just doing sort of stippling with the wax resist technique to get sparkles on the sea. So hopefully you will enjoy using these techniques, and I really look forward to seeing what you come up with. They are very useful. I use these techniques particularly if I'm out painting out and sketching outside. They're very useful because you don't have to take lots of materials out with you. So I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thank you.